Okay, so welcome to Grande Prairie Dev Meetup number 2. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming and joining. Today's talk is on NextJS, a little bit of Tailwind, and then Netlify for free hosting. So this is kind of a beginner talk on React, and I've chosen NextJS as the framework to use for React. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about what React is in general. You can kind of Google that yourself, but NextJS is an excellent framework for React that takes care of a lot of the annoying parts of React, such as routing, rendering. It's got built-in TypeScript support. There's a whole bunch of goodies that we're going to just scratch the surface of today. And they also have a great tutorial that's gamified, so you get points every time you go through it. So it's really, really fun. We're just going to go to the docs and we're just going to dive right into it. And so this expects you to have Node installed on your computer. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to just create next app. I'll be using npm. I won't use yarn, even though I do like yarn better. So what's going to call this? Let's call this GP Devs Meetup. So as you notice here on my terminal, it's installing React, React DOM, and Next. And just take a bit of time here. So you can do this create next app, or you can do the manual setup, but this create next app is much easier to use. So we're good to go. So I'm going to open up that folder in my VS Code here, GP Devs Meetup. So here's our structure. So this is the default NextJS framework, what gives you have a folder for styles. You'll notice here there's 2 CSS files in here. There's a public folder, which is just for pictures, documents, that kind of thing. And then there's this pages folder. And we'll notice here we have a API subfolder, our app.js, and our index. So I'm going to open up my terminal and run, oops, so used to running that, npm run dev. And so that will start our dev server. So if I open up a new tab and go to localhost, you'll notice here on my terminal here, it should start doing some stuff. There we go. So it's building it, and now we have our welcome to Next.js. And so right away, you notice that it's running React. We have this index page here. So we edit pages/index, and we'll open this up here. Just going to bring this down a bit. And here's our homepage. So if we change this right here and say, hello GP devs, we save that, and there's our hello GP devs. So Next.js has, I think they call it fast refresh built in, so you don't have to refresh the page to see your changes. You can type away, save your file, and it'll automatically refresh the component that we saved. And this is our entire page as a component. So let's maybe begin by creating. I'm just going to wipe out this page here. Delete this class name. Delete all this. And we'll just have a GP Devs Meetup. Okay. And delete all this too. So we just have this very simple function, a JavaScript function, and we're just calling it home, and it returns a div with an h1 tag in it, and that's it. And we see that here. And this really cool thing about Next.js is the routing. So if everything you have in here for pages, besides index is a special one, and so is app. But if we make a new page called about.js, and we export a default function, we'll just call it about page. You can call it anything you want. And then we're going to return. And we return a div, and we're going to say h1 about page. Okay. And now if we go to our /about, you'll notice we have our about page. And NextJS takes care of all the routing for us. So we don't have to worry about that. And we can make a contact page and do the same thing. We can call this contact, not even contact page. And if we go to contact now, we have our contact page. So it's very simple to create your pages because anything that's in pages becomes a page accessible by the URL, which is really, really cool. So let's say we want to, I'm kind of thinking for the purpose of this talk, we'll do a kind of a business website, like your standard about page, contact page, home page, services, that kind of thing. And we'll see how far we get in our time slot here. But what makes so let's go back to our home page. So this home page is kind of useless. We can't actually go to our other pages. So maybe let's add a menu. So I'm just going to put a header up here, and let's put a UL, or let's put a nav. We'll do it properly. UL, and I'm going to import a special NextJS component called link. And I think I need to import it. Is it just next? I believe that's what it's called. Let me just check it out and see. And the docs are really, really good for this too. Routing. Okay, so import C. So next from link. And it requires it. So this kind of replaces your H tag for navigating to pages on your own website. So if we're going to go to /about, and we're going to call this about. So then we go back to our website. And now we click this and it goes to the about page. Go back. Now we're at the home page. You still can do a traditional H tag in here, but the special thing about this link is that it doesn't actually reload the whole website when you go to the next page. So you see this, you had that flash, whereas you use this special link, it's instant. And that's because NextJS will just replace whatever is in this case, we have this app file on in this component that we have. So NextJS will replace whatever's in that component with your next page. In our case, it was the about page. So this enables us to do instant page changes without reloading the entire page. It just reloads what needs to change. And that's kind of what React is all about. And so we're definitely utilizing that right here. So we should probably add our other contact page in there too. So if we go back to our home page, now we can go to our contact page too. Oh, I have these both in one LI. Sorry. There we go, that's better. So now we can go to both pages, that's really cool. But we can only access these pages from the home page. So on a traditional business website, you kind of want the menu always available. So let's change that. Let's create a new folder. And we're going to call it components. And this is just a very classic nomenclature. It could be called whatever you want, but this is kind of the standard. And I'm going to create a component called menu. And I'm going to export a default function called menu. And I'm going to return our menu. So I'm just going to take out our whole menu and plop it in our menu function component here. So now if we go back and save on our home page, our menu is going to disappear. And I guess we need to import this link in our menu as well because we're using it there. Oops. And if anybody has questions, definitely jump out and talk. So I've created my menu component, but now I want to use it in my homepage. So I'm just going to import it. And importing and exporting is it's a JavaScript thing. It's not a React thing. And so since we did a default export, we don't need brackets around it. So, and I'll explain that in a minute here. And now we need, it expects a path here. So we're currently in pages. So we're going to go back up one. We're going to go to components, and we're going to export the menu. And now we're going to pull off that menu right into our home page. So you'll notice how, because there's a bunch of stuff happening here, and I'll try and explain it here the best I can. But so we're importing our menu, and then we're able to use it like an HTML tag. And this is a React component we just created. And now you can see it is in our home page. And I mentioned that you don't need to surround this in brackets earlier. The difference, you can export just functions like this in JavaScript. And this is a non-default export, they call it. And so now we go back to our index and we wrap it in a bracket. And so this is useful if you're exporting a bunch of stuff. So maybe you're exporting in here as well a different function. Menu other. So you can import the menu, you can import the menu other from the one page or one file. And this is kind of like personal preference. I always prefer this style of exporting. There's a bunch of reasons for it, which I don't really want to get into right now, but for now I'm just going to keep it all default for this demo. So I'm just going to delete this. And then we have our menu. So now I'm not using this link anymore, so I'm just going to remove this. And there's our homepage. So a little bit simpler, a little bit cleaner. All of our menu code is now in one spot, which is great. And now we can use it in multiple places and, don't repeat yourself, no copy and pasting. But we still have the issue where it's only on the one page. So let's fix that. So I'm just going to do this now too. And so if you use VS Code, you'll notice that it's going to pop up. Oh, you want this one from component/menu. So if I hit enter, it will automatically import it for me. And I just close that tag. And now it's in both pages. And lastly, we got to do that in contact as well. And we go to contact, and there's our menu. And notice we forgot our homepage link. So let's add a link for the homepage. There. So now we have a menu. We have a menu in one spot. We can easily add new pages, and we don't have to update every single page. We just update one file, and our menu updates. And so it's quite handy. So React is basically all about componentizing as much as your app as possible and reusing those components where you can. And this menu is an example of a component. Does that make sense so far? Am I going too fast?
Makes sense so far.
Okay. So it's kind of ugly. It's all very default right now. So there's a few ways you can style this. If you're coming from a traditional dev perspective, you might be used to having maybe a Sass file or a CSS file that you would put all your styles in, and then you would put that at the top of your HTML file. React is kind of different. React is basically everything in one file, and you can still do the old technique of putting it all in one file, but I'm going to do what's called CSS and JS at first. So you can still use style tags, just like you can in HTML. So we're going to start with that, and then I'm going to switch to Tailwind after. So first things first, I want a prettier menu than this. I don't like the bullet points. This isn't really how menus should work, in my opinion. So let's change that. So first things first, let us Oh, I don't know, get rid of the bullet points. So the thing about doing CSS and JavaScript is that it still has to be valid JavaScript. So you can't literally write CSS, you have to write it JavaScript style. So normally I would write list-style : and then I would say none maybe if this is CSS. But this is a valid JavaScript, as you can see from my errors here. And so they kind of adopted a different style. So you would do list style, and then it has to be a string. And if you're using VS Code or a similar advanced editor, you'll notice that a lot of it will autocomplete for you. So these are all my list styles I can have with this UL. So I'm just going to say none. And I save that, and my bullet should go away. And now let's get rid of the padding. And now our padding's gone. This is great for mobile, but I'm just going to focus on this screen right now. So maybe let's make this a flex display so that we can do that way. And you know what, this is kind of, maybe let's make these ULs have a bit of margin. Margin left. But you notice I have to copy and paste this for each one. And now we got spacing, but this is starting to get ugly for a number of reasons. So first things first, we have our style in our markup, which is okay. If you're coming from a traditional web dev perspective, this is really, really bad, but this is actually normal now. But the thing I'm really concerned about is that we're now copying and pasting our styles and all these LIs. And so normally you would say, yeah, just make a class in CSS and use that. And that's valid, you can still do that. But I'm going to do something different. I'm going to create a function called menu item. And I'm going to pass in a URL, and I'm going to pass in a title. And this is going to return a menu item. So I'm just going to paste this up here, and my path becomes, so now I'm going to use these curly braces, and I'm going to put my URL in here instead of actually putting in my URL. And same with home. I'm going to put curly braces and put title. And so what we're writing in when we're using React is called JSX. JSX. And this stands for JavaScript XML. And it kind of looks like a mix between JavaScript and XML. But when you want to embed, you can embed any valid JavaScript within these curly brackets. So I could do string concatenation. I could do math in here if I wanted to. Obviously, that's not going to do anything, but you can do any valid JavaScript in these braces. So you could do even any JavaScript functions you can do on that. So that's kind of the power of JSX. But now we have this function menu item, and so let's use that. So I'm going to call menu item, and now it wants me to give what, a URL and a title. So URL equals, in this case, is our home page, and our title is home. And then we close that, and we can delete this first one. And our, one sec. Oh, okay, this is a good thing to run into. So I'm returning an li tag. Oh, it should be okay then. Where is this issue coming from? Oh, 1 second. Is that why? React children only function. That's odd. Does anybody see my issue? Nav. Why am I missing? Okay, let's try deleting these ones and then doing our menu item. Interesting. What if I not do a default export here? Yeah, I know it's supposed to refresh now. Oh, I see you do that here too. Interesting. I understand why it's saying that, but header menu. Okay, well, let's try something else then. Let's try creating our menu item.js. Maybe let's move this function over there. Let's see. Export default. That's gonna fix it. Oh, I still got the same problem. Return. Oh, I think this is why. Demo showed. Okay, well, that's interesting. Oh, object bound with keys. Use an array instead. That's not very helpful. I'm praising next year, and that's not a very helpful error message, is it? Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this here, but menu item. Oh, maybe I have to wrap this. Oh, okay, I had to wrap the. I guess you can only send one parameter to this. So, okay. But yeah, okay, so we're back now. So now I have.
Just because you had to deconstruct your props, right, for those two items?
Yeah, but I thought I could just send multiple parameters, but I guess you can't do that like that. But that makes sense, I guess, which is okay. So yeah, so we still have our menu items, so now we can add all of our styling in the one spot again. So now if we want more styling on here, we can say like that, right? And now we have our menu still. So this is great. This is just fine if you want to use CSS, but I kind of want to use Tailwind. So Tailwind, if you've used something like Bootstrap before or Material UI, there's a whole bunch of different CSS libraries, but right now my personal favorite is Tailwind. And it's a lot different than Bootstrap. It's all these tiny utility classes that do one specific thing, and you just chain them all together to make your component. Excuse me, and that's perfect for React because you can put all your code in your component, and your tree still looks nice and clean. So let us install this in our Next.js app. So I'm just going to search up Tailwind, and they have lots of different ways to install it. We're going to use the Next.js guide. We've already created our project, and now we're going to set it up. And so I'm just going to copy this command. So let's close this, paste that into our terminal. And the next thing we do is we need to create our config files. And so again, there's a nice command for that. So we paste that in, and it will create these two files, Tailwind config and post CSS config. So post CSS config is basically empty, allows us to add Tailwind plugins. And then we have our Tailwind config itself, which has a few options. These are just the defaults, which are all fine. And I'm going to add, if we scroll down a bit more here, I'm going to add this purge option here. And so the way that Tailwind works is that when you're running it on dev, there's basically a huge CSS file generated for every single class that Tailwind provides. And it's like 100 megabytes, like it's stupid big. And you never want to serve that in a production site. So use this purge command. So I'm going to paste it in there. And so basically just put the paths of where you put your components. And so the default is pages and components, which is, we see here, we have that. If we add another one, say like maybe services, and we put components in there too, then we would add another one. And then we just call that services. And this is basically all the places it needs to look for any React components. And so the way that Tailwind works is that it looks for all your components and it gathers a collection of all the classes that you're currently using, and then it just gets rid of everything else. And so the benefit of doing this is that you're actually serving a very, very small amount of CSS, literally just the CSS that you're actually using across the entire website, as opposed to a massive CSS file that may or may not contain CSS you're still currently using. Okay, so we've configured that, and now we're going to include Tailwind in our project. There's two ways. There is, if you're not going to do any custom CSS, so you don't want to write anything else besides Tailwind, you can just simply import the tailwind.css file. But if you want to do some custom stuff, then you'd have to do it this way. So maybe let's do it this way. Maybe we want to write some custom stuff. So it says into styles, global CSS. This is the global CSS for everything in a NextJS file. And if you'll notice in our app file, we're actually importing this. And that is where our styles is coming from. You notice this H1 is nice and big and it's got some stuff. So where's our globals? So it's got our default stuff in here. So we're just going to delete all this. And we're going to paste in these Tailwind commands here, or I guess directives they call them. So we save that, and we are already including this in our app.js file, if you notice here. So we're good to go. And so now if we run our dev command again, and we refresh our website, our styles should change in here. And I think we're going to run out of time here, but I can just start a new room if you guys want to continue with this.
I'll stick around. I don't know.
Good old
Okay.
Zoom.
Yeah, basically. Okay, I'll start a new Zoom when this one ends here then. Okay, so where's our...
I thought it said something about unlimited minutes, so I don't know if it will or not.
I think it's for one-on-one calls. It's unlimited.
Okay.
But I guess we'll find out in 3 minutes. But yeah, so now you'll notice here that my H1 tag isn't as nice and beautiful anymore. It's just basic text now. And that's because I deleted all of our styles and we're now using Tailwind. And we have no Tailwind classes in here right now. So let's fix that. So if you're writing HTML, you're used to writing class equals blah, 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 blah. But class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. And so to get around that, React decided to call class name. So basically class name is class. So this is our H1 here. Let's make this a little bit nicer looking. Let's make it bigger. So I'm just going to say text-5XL. Maybe let's make it, I don't have the, I need to close my editor to get that up here. So now we notice it's bigger. Maybe let's do a color. Let's say indigo. So now we have a nice color on it. I'm going to restart my VS Code because I have a Tailwind extension installed that will have autocomplete because right now we have no autocomplete and this is not nice. And so I want to show you the nice dev experience that Tailwind provides us. So I'm just going to close this and reopen it. Run my npm dev, and now we should be able to maybe say h dash. Where's my? Oh, still not loading. There we go. So you notice there's a color here now, and here's my Tailwind options. So there's text dash. This is the size. We have the justification, left, right, or center. All the colors that Tailwind has. So Tailwind has a bunch of default colors. Oops.
What plugin is this?
This is the default one that Tailwind provides, is IntelliSense. Here, I'll paste this in the chat here. Meetups. So I know it's VS Code. I'm pretty sure the JetBrains IDEs have it too. But yeah, this is really, really nice. So it has all the classes in there. So you have to like, the first time I used Tailwind, I was going back and forth between the docs and my code. But it's written so smartly that you just, what you expect the class to be, the class is. Like for example, if I want to add a margin on this, let's go back to our file here. So if I wanted to maybe margin left dash 10 spaces, and it'll bump me over 10. And they have margin left dash, and there's a bunch, yeah, 0 through all the way, and then it jumps up, and there's lots of different options in here, which is why it creates a massive CSS file when you're developing, and why you want to include that purge option. But let's just delete that. So there's our H1. Let's style our menu with Tailwind instead, because right now we're using CSS. So if I delete this, class name, so we had a margin left. Let's do like 6, margin right of 6. Maybe our header should change a bit. This is kind of boring. Maybe we'll have a add some padding. So we'll do padding left and right. So padding X. Let's do like a 4. And you'll notice here it says it's 1 rem, which is about 16 pixels. So it'll tell you in the comments here what all these sizes are. And you can also extend these and actually make the sizing whatever you want. In our Tailwind config, there's this extend option, and you can actually extend and change whatever you want in Tailwind. So if you want to add like your branding colors, say you have different sizes you want to add, maybe your fonts, literally everything you can play with, you can extend in here. And they have a whole section in their docs of extending. Yeah, so there's breakpoints you can extend. The pre-flight, which is their defaults. And yeah, you can see here there's tons of stuff. All sorts of stuff you can play with, like, and their docs are pretty good. It's pretty straightforward. But one of the cooler things I'll show you next is how we do like breakpoints and like hovering states and that kind of thing. But back to our menu. I get distracted so easily. So we'll do our padding up and down. So now we have a little bit of padding. Maybe we'll do a background. So we're gonna do BG dash another color. So we can pick a color. Let's search our colors again. So these are all the default colors that Tailwind comes with. So there's gray, red, yellow, emerald, blue, indigo, purple, pink. And then they have, we'll skip past all this stuff. And then if you want, they have extended colors you can use. And so there's a whole bunch of different colors. And so for example, we'll pick this rose, and you'll notice there's 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, all the way to 900. So there's different scales. So it's really easy to change, to set up like yours. So if our background color, if our text color is 600, maybe let's make our background color the same color, but we'll do 100. And now they're both the same color, but different. Tyler, you can correct me on this because you're the designer here, but different like hue. I don't know. I'm not a designer, but
Sure.
The nice, is that right?
Yeah.
Good enough, Hugh. Okay. Yeah, so these are all handpicked by the Tailwind designer that are all complement like from 50 to 900. You can extend these colors with your own branding colors, but it won't auto-generate these different levels. You'll have to do that yourself. And there are actually, I think there's a tool for this actually, Tailwind custom colors. I think there's actually someone wrote a tool to actually kind of make that yourself. Maybe add shade, let's see here. Okay, that's not gonna work. But there is, I found a tool before that will, do its best guess and generate these 10 different stops for you.
So you just put in like one shade and then it would just generate all the other ones?
Yeah, like the tool would generate like the necessary config information. So if we're gonna put our colors, let's do this right now. So we're gonna do colors. I think this is how you do it. We're on that page, might as well. Yeah, so you do custom colors. Colors, okay, and then you just name it. So we can say maybe primary, and I don't know. I don't know what color it's gonna be. It's probably gonna be ugly. But now we can use that, and we can use that so we can say instead of BG indigo 100, we can say primary. And let's see once it reloads here. Oh, we might have to restart our server because we played with the config file here. So once it loads here, and you can extend, yeah, they have, I don't think there's much you can't extend in their extend file. But we can have maybe secondary, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if you wanted to do these stops, maybe you would do primary -50. Oh, I guess this would have to be in a string because it's a JavaScript file. And then maybe you could do 100 and so on and so forth. And that's how you would kind of make your own kind of color stops. But yeah, they don't do it for you because color is kind of a hard thing to extrapolate like programmatically and look nice because you kind of got to look at it and say, yeah, that's an ugly color. That doesn't match like that kind of thing. Let's see.
I'm not sure if those colors are actual real colors, so I don't know if it'll work.
Okay, let's click this then.
You only go up to F.
Okay, let's pick, okay, this one. That's our primary color and our, okay, purple, yeah. These are a really ugly website. And then we'll just make that primary like that. Okay, I guess we might need to restart our server again. No, do not restart. Oh, okay, let me just close this. If it's on Unix, I could just find that process and kill it. Maybe I need to close this. Yeah, okay. All right, thanks, Cody. Help me debug in real time. That's like the hardest thing. Actually, as Brianne can attest to, time zone issues are the hardest thing to debug.
Like it's still a thing. Like it still plagues everything I've done.
Oh, yeah.
Like you code so much and then you forget about it and then yeah, it's just.
And then February hits and you're like, oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah,
actually do that properly.
Shit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so now you can see my teal. I don't know what you call that. But you'll notice in my editor, actually my Tailwind IntelliSense actually picked up that color and now I can see it, which is kind of cool. So let's try our secondary color out. Oh, it's pretty close to that indigo, but it definitely changed. So that's how you can add your colors. And you notice how we didn't generate any CSS classes. We just added a color and it automatically generated the BG. We can go to it automatically generated our text. We can do something like there's gradients we can do. So BG gradient, let's see, so we have BG gradient to right from, let's do our indigo because it's kind of similar. Actually, let's do something really ugly. Let's just do yellow. Yellow dash 400 to primary. And there's our gradient, and it generated our gradient for us. So this extending a Tailwind config is really, really handy if you have, like, I'm gonna pick on Tyler here. You have a client that has you know, their branding and need to add their 3 colors. Well, you add their 3 colors to the config, and you don't have to generate any classes. It'll do it for you, and you're done. So that's really, really a fast way to add your colors without overriding default stuff or adding new classes, all that kind of stuff. So that's the basics of that stuff. Let's maybe space out our menu a bit more. Where's menu? Let's actually, we have a header here, but we only have the header in the one spot, don't we? Yeah, we don't have a header in that one too. Okay, let's treat our menu as our header then. Okay, I guess this is still CSS. We can change that too. So we have our default. So we're going to do our class name equals, so we're going to do flex. So that says display flex, you'll notice. Maybe let's do like a margin bottom of 10 and bump that. Oh, not margin. Oh, I guess it's on the, where is this on? Oh, this is on the home page. Let's move all this to our menu. There we go. So now each page has this. So let's make a margin. And there's our menu. One thing I'll quickly show is the great thing about mobile development with Tailwind. Okay, so let's add a whole bunch of pages to our menu. And now we have this scroll bar, and that is not nice, right? Well, maybe we don't want this on mobile. Maybe we want it stacked. So we're going to, so this is the default, right? We want it to not stacked. Okay, yeah, that's good for mobile. I'm not making anything really nice here. I'm just going to make it really straightforward here. But now if we go back to our desktop or desktop view, tablet view, whatever, it's still not stacked. That's not really nice. How do we fix this? Well, we say, so there's these breakpoints that are set up in Tailwind. There's SM, MD, LG, XL, is there, and then 2XL, I guess they have now. And so let's just stick with LG for our, large. So you do your breakpoint size, a colon, and then literally any Tailwind class. So we can say flex in our case. So now we go up, up, up. Oh, look at that, it's a flex now. And if we actually look at what the CSS is being generated, so we have LG flex, and so you'll notice right now we have no class besides the defaults. We jump up to a large, and now we have a media query. Min width is 1024 pixels. That's our large, which I think is Bootstrap's large too, and it does a display flex. And this is the actual CSS that's generated .lg, and then they have to escape the colon with the backslash and then flex. So we could say on LG we want to do flex. What else do we want to do on LG? Maybe we could do different gradient on LG. So we could say our from color changes. So maybe we do green. That's just the same color, and then they're pretty close actually. Maybe our 2 color will change too. LG 2-red, just so we can see the difference. So now our gradient changes. We didn't write a single media query. We didn't really do really any work. We just appended 3 characters in front of what we want it to do. And similarly, let's say I'm gonna go pick on the H1. What if I want to hover and I want it to do something? So let's say it becomes text as red. So when I hover it, it goes red. But another thing with, maybe I want to transition it so it's nice and a smooth transition to red. So that's kind of, it jumps, right? So I can say transition. And maybe I just want to do, you can pick which transition. You can do transition all. So every property will transition. You can do just colors, opacity. I'm just going to do all here. And then you're going to want to do a duration. Let's do 150 milliseconds. So we'll save that. And now it's a nice gradual transition. Maybe I want a 300 millisecond transition, so it's even slower. And so since I use transition all, if we look at the code, it sets it to transition property all. So every property that this H1 has will transition. So if I want to on hover, let's make hover the, I don't know, let's do a background. And maybe we'll do a background. So we'll save that. And now that transitions as well. I don't know if color will, so we change this to color. I'm not sure if that'll count for background color. Yeah, it does, okay. But we could do a different to show that. So we can do maybe take the font size and make it smaller. I'm not sure why the font size isn't changing. Okay, so I guess that doesn't work for text font size. But yeah, they have hover for their, what do they call those? Focus, active, all like the, yeah, you do first, child. So this is a cool one. So let's say in our menu, so it's first colon. So our first menu item, maybe we want menu item, right? Okay. So we say first, and we say the text is white on the first child. I wonder if that's gonna work, but oh, because I think what happens here is it actually is this useful to the child element, not the parent? Oh, you need to looks like you need to enable this first. So if we on variants, we extend on color. Is it what, an array? Yeah. I guess I'd have to, oops, I'd have to quit this, but okay, let's just remove that for now. But I mean, you can see how you're getting a lot of styles in your class and it's starting to get ugly. You know, it's whatever. But I mean, if you componentize your classes, then when you're using it, you only have, I mean, I don't have any classes in here if you componentize everything properly. But the really nice thing about this is, let's say you're working on a project and somebody new starts, a new dev comes on team, and they have to load up your legacy project and read the styles, and they're like, okay, okay, let's do something a little bit different. So for example, let me go like this. Let's see. On our index page, let's make a button. I wonder, I probably gotta restart this stupid server now. I'll do a little bit more on Tailwind, and then I'll probably switch to the deployment side of this. Because I guess it's already 8 o'clock. Oh my goodness. I have to close this now. Let's see, local host. Does anybody have any questions so far? Am I going too fast? I could be, but this is recording too, so I'll watch it back hopefully. Okay, so there's our a really ugly website so far. So I'm just going to do, this is a very arbitrary example of what I want to show, but this is an easy one to kind of understand. So I'm going to make a button component, and this is just going to be a simple button, and the button takes in what, a title. That's good enough for now. This is a very simple button. Title. So if I go back to my index page, I'm just going to and it wants a title, right? Title equals click me. Okay, so here's our button. So let's put some styles on this to make it look like a button. So maybe a background, and I'm just going to do, I'll stick with our indigo, or I'll stick with our primary color. Maybe make some padding, I don't know, to make it a rounded button. I'm going to just put a class on this to do, to get it away from the side there. Back to our button. Maybe let's give it some margin top. Okay, so there's our button. So this would be similar to doing, I'm just going to say in Bootstrap, you got your class equals btn primary. So this is our primary button. Maybe we want a hover state. So let me go back to our color picker, and I'm going to generate a hover color. So let's be, this one, I think. So if I'm using HSL, the last one L, I don't know what it stands for. If someone knows, they can pipe up. But it just moves up and down this grayscale here, so it's just darker. But I'm going to say primary hover. Well, let's go with primary dash hover. And then since this has to be valid JavaScript, well, I guess I gotta restart this again. So when I hover, I want to do bg primary. Oh, that's right there. I just seen it there. Hover. So if we go back to our website and refresh this, it should, once it reloads. So there's our, oh, that's kind of ugly, isn't it? Oh well. And maybe let's make it, just do that transition again. I just like transitions. I think they're much nicer than not transitions. Okay, so there's our button. And we go back to our index and we have this button. And so someone comes onto the project and they're asked to refactor this button. We want to change it to something else. And let's pretend that we're doing the old style of programming where we have a massive CSS file with our button code in it somewhere. And you're supposed to refactor it. You're supposed to completely change it. And you're supposed to get rid of the old button styles, because if you're not going to use them, you might as well delete them, get rid of any unused code, which is a good idea. So you would go in, you would change your CSS, but maybe it's got a funny class name. Maybe it's something, I'm just going to put this at the bottom for now so we don't lose it. Maybe the class name is like button, but it also has a class on there saying, I don't know, like components or something like this. And you know the button class, but you don't know what its component class does. But more importantly, you don't know what's actually using that components class. And let's say this code base is tens of thousands of components and you have to search through this, and if you delete this code, who knows what will break? Like, who knows what's going to happen if you delete this code and then maybe on your on your 5th contact page it might break. I don't know. But you can really only run that risk if you know exactly what's using that class. But if you're using Tailwind, it doesn't matter. You know exactly what classes it's using. It's right there. And you don't need to delete any classes because Tailwind is going to do that for you with the purge command. So that's one really nice feature about Tailwind, is that you can safely delete code and you don't have to worry about anything breaking. Another important thing that I actually spent a lot of time working at, because when I worked at image design, was naming things. And any programmer knows that naming things is one of the hardest things about programming. Let's change our code a bit here. Let's make a div. We're just going to do like a simple card. So we're going to have an image. And actually, this is a good to show how you use images in Next. And then we're going to have an H3. We're going to say simple card. And then maybe P with lorem ipsum. Oops, ipsum. So if you're using something like Bootstrap, you would say class equals card. And then this maybe would be class equals card dash image. And then maybe class equals card dash title. And if you're really crazy, card dash description or something like that, right? And this CSS is part of this, it has to be in this parent card. If you leave out that top card, this would all break. And now your markup is quite dependent on your CSS. But if we're using Tailwind, we can have a card. Maybe let's do just some basic margins to get it out of the way here. Let's pick a picture. I go with cats. Let's just save this. I'm going to save it in my GP Devs Meetup in the public. Let's make a new folder called images. And oh, it's a GIF image. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Let's find out. Let's call it cat. So if we go back to our, okay, we see cat there now. I wonder if I can just rename this to JPEG and it'll work. Cool. Okay, so I want to, so I got my margin. I want to add my picture. So if you're using images in NextJS, under your, so we have our public folder. So you would just do slash, and then we're going to do, it's under the images directory. So we're going to call it images, and it's called cat.jpg. And we're having alt because we're very accessible programmers. We like that. And we have an alt tag, and now there's our cat. How nice. Still kind of an ugly card, so maybe, oh, this should be class name. We don't want to be getting in trouble here. So our image, maybe let's make this font a bit bigger because it is a title after all. Maybe this whole thing has a background for our primary color. But that's ugly. Maybe let's make it inline block. And now we need to let's do a flex